down?
No.
Alright, hold on one second. Okay, can y'all see it now?
Yeah.
OBS? Alright, cool. So we'll give everyone a few minutes to join. Oh my gosh, while we're waiting on people to show up, I can show you guys the devastating heartbreak I experienced from a fellow E6er. Gosh, this was brutal. I think it was the daily one. Yeah, I got 17 through 32nd. Gosh, game 5 and game 7 were just gut-wrenching to look at the Sims. Not to mention when I was at the soccer game on Saturday, I was up 3-1 in both my round 1 series, and one of them got blown up. Alright, so, yeah. I think it was game 5. Let's go look. Oh, yeah. So, I made one error that cost me 5 runs in the 7th inning. That was brutal. And then, let's see, because my fielding was pretty solid all 3 rounds. Yeah, look at this one. So, I was up 2-1, and then gave up back-to-back. Bill Golickson, I think, did it. Wait, was it Golickson? Oh, Blah11, sorry. Blah11 gave up back-to-back jacks in the 8th. Yeah, it was pretty painful. And yeah, and he actually pitched well. He had a 2.65 ERA for the tournament. Such a bummer. Exto, you made it further than me, didn't you?
Yep. I made it 5 to 8th, I think. I made it to round 4, where Clavette bested me in 6 games.
And he went on to the finals? Did
I don't
Clavette?
remember.
Oh, Seawit, we have a champion in our midst. So Seawit, since we've ended up in DIL with each other, what, like 3 straight weeks? Oh, Clavette with semis. Yeah, so somehow, I've even checked, we are not friends. You are not on my friend list, Seawit, but we end up with each other every week in DIL, so at least I have a front row seat to Hugh Duffy now, which is pretty fun. In that format was that. Yeah, totally drag. And I had no bullpen. And so, like, it was a gamble of either set some pitch counts to avoid that, like, 4th, sometimes 5th time back through the lineup, or trot my Iron Boys out there. And, yeah, that was scary. Yeah, the bullpen got used a lot more. I don't think we pulled those stats, so Exo might be able to kind of engineer it while we're talking. But yeah, bullpens were way more relevant in PTCS, way more used than I thought they were going to be. So, all right, we're 5 minutes in. We're going to go ahead and get started, everyone. So we just want to do a fun breakdown this week. We know we've had 2 very, very meaty topics. Our first 2 streams. So we just want to do something a little bit fun. We're actually going to walk you guys through our thought processes preparing for PTCS. We're even going to get into assumptions we made based on some of the data that was available to us. And so we're gonna and I eat dinner super fast for this, guys. So then we're going to get into our assumptions. We probably won't have time to get deep into roster building for PTCS, but we are going to walk through our thought processes, assumptions we made, and then we're actually going to look at the data and we're going to check and see where our assumptions correct or not. Which is really all the control we have when it comes to OTP, right? Is just trying to look at what data is available, make assumptions, and build based on those assumptions. So So we're going to revisit a couple of slides from the past. Um, yeah, so it looks like Exo did pull so almost 2,000 innings pitched in relief. Um, three oh wait 3.5 thousand innings pitched in relief in the format. Yeah, that's a lot
It was about 1.75K per for each tournament.
for each tournament. Yeah, that's a way more relief innings than I thought. But hey, lessons learned, right? So context is key. So you guys have heard us say this on our first and second streams. Know your cap number and know your cap environment. And so, Aster, I'm going to kick it over to you for this tournament. So walk us through our cap number.
Okay. Hey guys. So going back, as Durden said, to some of our past streams and some of the concepts. So when we found out the new format, the first thing that I like to do is calculate my cap number. It was an 1875 cap with a spread from 40 being a minimum to perfect card being the maximum. So as you can see on the slide, that gives us a cap number of 13.92, which is a fairly loose cap. Now, one thing that I would point out is that it's not actually quite that loose, because the floor in this format, there really weren't that many 40 overall players. In fact, at a couple positions, if you wanted to have a backup, you were ending up using a 45, a 46, 48 even. And so that kind of squeezes the cap number down a little bit. When I first looked at 13.92, I thought I really was going to be able to fit in all the guys I wanted. But when I built my floor, I actually found that I had a little bit less than I thought to work with. Once you know the cap number, the second thing is to kind of look at the environment. So 1977 settings, that's boom era. You do need 5 starting pitchers, but they're going to throw a lot of pitch counts, and the pen is relevant. We're going to get into a little bit more how it turns out it was even more relevant than we thought. But that's the kind of basic factors. You need 5 starting pitchers. You need some pen depth. And this was a tournament with DH because although they don't quite always follow this, generally anything after the DH was implemented, they usually use that for tournaments. So that kind of gives you basic idea of, structurally what kind of roster you want to build. The higher cap number, I leaned towards Stars and Scrubs more. It was a little bit difficult, as I said, because the floor was a little higher than I would have liked. There weren't quite as many usable 40 to 44 over players, but I think there were so many guys that were hundreds that were just so far and above, and we'll get to the stats to bear out, but the Hank Aaron, Brooks Robinson, Willie Randolph, a few of the other top hundreds, and then pitchers, Early Wynn and Jerry Kuzman, they really, even though they're hundreds and that's the max, they punched well above their weight class in their overall production, although not for my team.
Yeah, I know there was me and someone else for a while, and I gave up, and a few people later. I mean, there were bids for 500,000 for Kuzman those last 5 or 6 days. And, I mean, to be a left-hander in a righty hitting dominant format, that guy was a monster in the tournament. So one quick thing I'll bring up, guys, just in case you miss chat in the main Discord sometimes. Aster brings up a really good point, is once you actually build your shell, you spent way more than 1,040 points. And so, gosh, I'm like PTSD. I've only glanced at my tournament just now when the stream was starting, since it finished. I just refused to open it. I think I rostered Eisenreich in one of my builds. And was Omar Infante available? I think he was, right? I can't remember. But I do remember I spent way more on my skeleton in one of my builds specifically. And so I actually had to recalc my cap number. because my shell ended up taking about a full head count off my cap number. So I think I ended up building with like a 12.5 after building my skeleton. And there was a big divide between like the 42-ish relief pitchers and the like 52-ish relief pitchers. There's a pretty big performance gap. Not massive, but enough to make you think twice about it. And so it's really important. We had a great discussion in Maine a couple of weeks ago. I think it was me and Mike ABC, and we were talking about. He was talking about stream and about how building your skeleton is such an important exercise. That guys, you can actually build your skeleton in any tournament, any cap format. If you have a skeleton that you use in a lot of formats, build your skeleton out and then export that skeleton. And so then all you have to do in any cap format, if you're going to look at roster building, is import. You can just literally export it as like AAA skeleton so that it always shows up at the top of your save files. And so then you can pull that skeleton in any cap format and build from there. That way you actually know what your cap number is going to be all the time. It's not going to be 1040. Almost none of us build a skeleton with the 1040 number. And so if your go-to skeleton is a 1096, then you know that going into building any cap format. And so it's a really good tip. Me and Mike were talking about that, and I just want to make sure to bring it up on stream. So awesome. And so Exto's kind of running the show. He's our stats guy. He lives for this stuff. And so I'm going to start turning it over to him. And Exo, me and Aster are just going to compliment you from here on out, buddy.
Thanks. So previously we were talking about how the era impacts the results. And so this was a table, again, that I think you can randomly find. But conveniently, it has 1977. And that was the era for PTCS. So I guess some of the highlights is that compared to 2010, there's actually more runs per game, more hits per plate appearance, less doubles, more triples just going across. About the same home runs, about the same RBIs, around the same stolen bases, a little bit more. But so offensively, it kind of looks roughly to what we would see from 2010. Going to the pitching, you're off by a few points here and there for FIP, for walks. One of the big changes is the strikeouts. So strikeouts in 1977 was 5.2, and for 2010 was 7.1. So that's one thing. But even just looking at this and not even going into the base game, you can kind of see that there is a bit different.
Yeah. And so here's the 2010 league totals. So Exto went in and pulled these for you guys. So here's the 1977 league totals. And but we actually have I'm gonna pull this over here, Exto, because this is a really, really, really important slot. But yeah, guys, you can go in the base game, and you wanna be like the god of a fictional league, and you can come in here, commissioner mode, and you can come in and look at all the different years for league totals. And so, but I'm going to pull this over here, Exo, and really let you kind of dive into this slide.
So, in one of the next slide, I talk more about the modifiers themselves, but generally how I imagine the engine working. Like, I'm no expert, but there's a whole bunch of totals that dictate sort of the league totals, and then there's these modifiers which kind of adjust the ratings for the cards so that the league totals could be reached. They need to be tuned based on the ratings of the cards. Otherwise, and there's if you go into the game and go into the base game, there's an auto recalc. But generally, looking at the two, for MLB players who were in 2010, if they were going to be playing in 1977, we can see that the total at bats go down by roughly 20,000. And if you then look at the three true outcomes, which are easy to kind of map to PT because they go home runs equals power and movement, strikeouts equals AVK and stuff, and walks are equated to control and I. So you can kind of see that for the percentage of these three true outcomes compared to the amount of at bats that are in the set up in the league totals are fairly close in terms of the percentages, except for strikeouts, which have a big drop. To accommodate for that, you can see the modifiers actually change significantly when go from a 2010 to 1977 if you had the same player pool. So assuming that you're running the same cards in 2010 as you would be running in 1977, the engine as it is right now would modify these modifiers to be those values to try to achieve those counting statistics.
Yeah, and think about modifiers, guys. Again, like think about modifiers as almost sort of like behavioral drivers, you know, for the engine itself. And well, I guess if we're going to say use the term behavioral modifiers, we want to think about player behaviors, but also as it relates to engine behaviors. Is that safe to say, X though?
They drive the outcomes,
Yeah.
and the cards have to behave in a way to achieve those outcomes.
Yeah. And so I know this is not a hyperlink. And so, hey, by the way, anyone watching, you're welcome to DM me and remind me to post the slides, and I can definitely do that. I can export them as a PDF and post them. Oh, thank you, by the way. Exo just put the link in the chat too. Exo, do you want to let everyone know what you just linked?
Yeah, so talking with Chimera, who knows a lot about the engine, I was asking him about this last year, and he was saying modifiers are used to alter the probabilities of events based on the player pool to get closer to the league totals. And this link that I dropped in Discord, it was something that I think API dropped last year as well, is talking from Roko, who, if you go and look in the forums, he's posted a ton of stuff about modifiers and research and whatnot. But essentially, increasing or decreasing modifiers tells the engine that the average player in the player pool doesn't have the ratings or have too high ratings to get that league total, and that the odds must be adjusted. So essentially, if you go and read that link, they basically change. They did an experiment where they changed the amount of plate appearances, but fixed the other league totals. And effectively, if you said, I want. Normally, you get. If you go back to a couple of slides, I could use that as or just the one slide. Sorry, where we had the totals. So, given, say in 1977, if we had 16. If we had the 165,000 at bats rather than 143,000 at bats, but we kept everything else the same, then what it's essentially saying is that the player pool is not good enough to achieve those 1977 stats within that many at bats. But reality, without changing any of the modifiers, would be the cards would be seen as superstars. So, your 40 overall card may play as if it's a 70 or an 80 or a 90. So it's really easy to mess things up. Is the gist of it. You have to be sure, and the engine allows, or when you go to league totals, you can go to recalc modifiers, and what that's really doing is it's going through the league and saying, oh, what's the average player, and what does the average player, or how much do I have to adjust their ratings to reach these totals across a league.
Yeah, if you want to have some fun, guys, and you're sitting around on the weekend board, go mess around with modifiers in a fictional league, or you could take I'm sure you can do it with the historical league. You can import like teams from a year for a fictional league, but go in there and mess around with the modifiers, and then run a season of Sims. It is awesome. It's a lot of fun. You can get some, you just by slight changes, you can get some pretty wonky results. So, um,
Yeah.
yeah. So, any questions from anyone about um, looking at league totals and modifiers? Yes, you can absolutely break a league.
Yeah, it's super easy to mess things up.
Yeah. Um, all right. So, I'm gonna let you kind of um, wait. We were just looking at this, weren't we? Oh yeah, we were talking
Okay.
about decreases. Sorry, Exto. I'll
Yeah.
let you keep going.
So a good way to kind of view if you're going into the game and trying to understand what the league total modifiers mean, a good way to do it is going to be based off of the percentage of at bats, or at least that's what I thought would be a good way. So you can kind of see even though the amount of home runs dropped by 1,000, percentage of the total amount of at bats in the league, it actually dropped uh, only 9%. Similarly, strikeouts, which has a huge drop, goes from like it's almost half. So instead of thinking that it's going to be a 50% reduction, really combined to combined against the percentage of total at bats, it's actually only 40%. And again, if you look at the walks, it shows 2,000 less walks in 1977, but compared to the total amount of at bats that you have in the league, it's actually a slight increase of
Yeah.
about 2%. And
Yeah.
what one thing to note is like the totals don't really I don't think get adjusted when you recalc modifiers in a fictional league, but the um, the modifiers do, and that just allows some fuzziness so you don't get um, exact reproductions all the time.
Yeah. Um, Lud, you were asking, does Mushroom have video on setting up test leagues? I don't know if he does. Setting up test leagues, if you want to understand how the engine works and modifiers work, setting up, you can call them sim modules, you can call them test leagues. Some people will run full season stats and like make sure players don't change over time. Other people just run sim modules just to try and get like the high level stats. Like, if you want to do any of that to really try and understand how the game works, if Mushroom has a video, that's awesome. You're welcome to link it if he does. But we're not talking about setting up test leagues so much as we are talking about just being able to go in and look at historic league totals if you want to. So you can see, you can, like, if you're going to play tournaments extensively in PT, then you do need to have an idea of what kind of modifiers you're going to be running up against, and that's the best place to go check those out. All right. Here you go, Exto.
Yeah, so if we were just looking at the modifiers themselves and how they would work for off the player pool, so the home runs, basically the power modifier, I believe decreased by about 26% in the two examples that we're looking at, and the strikeouts decreased 30 around 38%, and the walks decreased around 19%. So this just kind of shows that the ratings in the cards have to be reduced so that the totals can be achieved based off of uh, the current player pool. And I know not 100% of what happens in the base game really flows with perfect team, but
Totally.
from what we feel like and what we've looked at, like they're it's pretty much as best of an example as we have for how perfect team works. Like they are similar, so it's kind of good to see like what we think is going to play up, what's going to play down, and what have you, and that kind of leads to our assumptions.
Yeah. So these were, I don't know, I think me, you, and Aster, we were probably when we were just spitballing here and there, which, by the way, Aster is getting over COVID. So he just like disappeared going into PTCS. Poor guy. I think today is like your first day you actually felt like getting out of bed, Aster. Um,
Yeah, I managed to get to my desk for the first time and could actually look at stuff, but I kind of wish I hadn't looking at the PTCS results, but they are what they are.
yeah, and I've for the last 5 years I've done my own independent consulting thing and had a blast and a lot of freedom. And I went back to corporate America this week, and so I lost a ton of time the last week or two also. And so poor Exto's kind of been leading the charge by himself. So, but I think we were kind of all in agreement on these assumptions. What do you guys think?
Yeah, re just looking at what we had in terms of data, which was primarily the Heinsohn's, the 1977 era, 1977 cap. We we kind of cheated, and we knew that these were kind of what was gonna be happening. But that was for the purpose of this exercise. I think this is what we kind of thought as well.
Yeah.
Looking at the errors and the modifiers and the league totals and what that really meant.
Yeah. So I do want to tell you guys though. So in chat, real quick, do we have any poker players here? I'm just curious because the best way for me to explain what I'm about to say is from a poker perspective. So in poker, you have or blackjack, right? There's optimal strategy in blackjack, in which is much more of a self-contained game than poker. But so you have you don't always know all the information, just like in PT, right? And so and in PT, bad teams win sometimes, just like in poker, where you get bad draws. The but as long as you make the most optimal decision based on the information available, enough times, if you're faced with that situation over a long period of a long statistical period, then you will come out a winner, right? But like within that period of time, you're going to have bad runs, right? Where you're just facing negative variance. And so variance is real, especially in RNG kind of, I mean, OOTP embraces RNG, right? Like, holy crap, they embrace it. Feels like this year we faced even more RNG than we did in PT22, and I don't think we thought that was possible. And so, so you have to understand that even in a tournament, one tournament instance like PTCS, where you have 128 team pool, you're still going to see variance within those tournament instances. You're still going to see statistical variance. What I'm trying to say is you're not going to see observed stats that fall perfectly in line with predicted statistics based on league totals and modifiers. Am I doing a poor explanation, Exto?
Oh no, you need a lot of data. Is what you're
Yeah.
trying to say. And
Yeah.
and I took the daily and the weekly, and so that's two 128 team tournaments. Gives us an idea. Even the Heinsohn's data that I was comparing against is over about 7. So even when we do present the next few slides and compare Heinsohn's with, I think I did the overnight under the cover cap, because that's an open cap,
Yeah.
just to kind of see in terms of distributions of statistics.
Yeah.
We just don't have enough data to kind of capture what it should be, and kind of reverse engineering what the league totals are between Heinsohn's and PTCS and
Yeah,
and
Mike,
like
that was
being
the
wrong,
first thing we did.
like being wrong about everything.
Yeah, you missed it. You have to go back and watch the VOD. We put you on blast for about, I don't know, probably like 8 or 9 minutes that you were completely wrong about everything. No, but Seawit, I wasn't responding to you, by the way. Sorry, I didn't even see your thing. We are going to look at the observed stats. And so, so guys, like you'll see the abbreviation SSS, the acronym in chat. That stands for super small samples or small sample size, whatever. just to give you guys an idea, if you have started playing around with the observe stats, you're relatively new. A lot of the long timers know this, but you actually won't even see a card's performance stabilized to around 4,500 at bats is kind of the rule of thumb. And so to give you an idea of how much variance can exist within the engine, I don't know if you guys remember PT21. Lorenzo Kane had an awesome tournament edition card, and I got my hands on one and started running him. And around 2,500 at bats, so 2,500 at bats, he was like the 11th best center fielder in my observed data. And by the time I got to 4,500 at bats, he was the like center field number one by like a healthy margin. And so when you think about that's how many at bats you need in a single card for its performance to somewhat stabilize, not even perfectly, but somewhat stabilize. When you think about that over the course of it, how many plate appearances you want in a sample size of tournament data. Me personally, I don't even start running like deep analysis on tournament data, like where I'm like, yes, I'm putting my faith in this, and I'm not, gut instinct is out the door. Like until I'm around 1.5 to 2 million plate appearances of tournament data. So I just want you guys to know that like there's a lot of noise in tournament data. But anyway, I'll stop spoiling the fun. Let's just look at the data. But for those of you new, I just wanted to give you that warning. And if you have any questions, just DM one of us or all of us and ask us. All right, here you go, Exto.
Yeah, so this was a comparison of rate stats. I tried to import from Excel, but Google Sheets struggles. But you can kind of see just the data sets that we're dealing with in terms of the amount of plate appearances. So between the two PTCSs, there were 115,000 batter face or plate appearances. And Heinsohn's, the data set I had, which I think goes back to since it first ran, is around 371,000. Over the under, the covers cap is around 400,000. So you can kind of see. I think the color coding is correct, but some of the things that, in terms of just looking between PTCS and Heinsohn's, who should have the same error settings, is you kind of see things that pop out are a big increase in strikeouts, a slight increase in walks, a slight decrease in home runs, slight decrease in ERA, very slight decrease in runs against per game. The thing that I may have to look back and recalculate is that big FIP number. Like I don't understand how we get almost a 6 FIP. The BABIP is about the same. That was kind of surprising, but maybe not really. And the WOBA weights, they all seem to be about the same except for home runs. Yeah. And then one thing we kind of talked about just before the stream was how, with the increase in Ks, how does that impact the amount of grounded and double plays? And it seems like because the increase in Ks in PTCS, the grounded and double plays per 600 actually went down. Yeah. Compared to Heinsohn's.
Yeah, we're and again, I know we did the whole 1.5 to 2 million plate appearance kind of word of caution, but man, there was just so much here. We like early today, we just kind of did a dry run, kind of talking through it, and after like 30 minutes, I think we all had headaches and we had to hop off because we were just talking ourselves into more and more circles, trying to bring a sense of logic to kind of the numbers you're seeing. But if we go back and look at our assumptions, right, that there'd be more balls in play due to a huge decrease in strikeouts. And what we were really saying is avoid K rating was essentially nerfed by the modifier. And so when we hop over here, though, we actually see that Ks were actually relevant in the PTCS. We saw a bump from Heinsohn. I don't even know how to pronounce it. Heinsohn, Sons, whatever. So we actually saw a bump at Ks, but BABIP actually kind of stayed relatively the same. There wasn't a big significant difference there. And so, when we said home run numbers should be down versus a moderate environment, and so we actually see more home runs. Um, and so walk totals should stay the same, right? So I should be true, and we kind of see that a little bit. Aster, I think it was you that brought up the how we could think about the home run number, right, based on order of operations.
Well, so just to correct you there, home runs did go down from Heinsohn's,
Yeah.
as you know, as we kind of expected. So we were right about that. But the thing that what I noticed when we were discussing it before is going to the next slide. Um, I don't know if we want to jump to that right now or
Yeah,
wait.
we
Wait.
can. It's okay.
Okay. Um, so one of the things that I thought was interesting is looking at the player usage comparing the two tournaments. Is that it's pretty interesting to see that the avoid K of PTC of the top 25 PTCS players was much higher than for Heinsohn, and movement. I mean, sorry, not movement. Stuff actually went down, and somehow strikeouts went way up. And that is just, I can't wrap my head around how we got to that result. It would seem that, if the batters had more of higher avoid K and the pitchers had less stuff, then we really should not have ended up with a significant increase. My instinct is to say, well, small sample size. We just need OTP to run the PTCS a few hundred times with the same lineups and see what happens. And hopefully, I would have gotten out of the second round in one of those. Um, but if you look at those numbers, it just doesn't quite seem to add up. If somebody in chat has any idea of how we could get there, I can't quite put my finger on it. So that was the
Yeah.
main thing that looking at the data earlier today, I was just really struggling with.
Yeah, and so since we're on this rating aggregate slide, so PJ, yeah, the weird player pool, definitely different player pools, right, between the Hansons and the PTCS, definitely different player pools. So yeah, Mac Jacks, I mean that's man, I love putting my tinfoil hat on as much as anyone. I freaking love it. And it definitely like man, the PTCS instance has a vibe to it, man. Like these numbers are pretty crazy. So, kudos to Xdo because Xdo was like, you know what, like this isn't making sense. Let me go pull the player usage rating aggregates, and one of the first things I thought when I looked at the batters, right, is that yes, the modifiers should have nerfed avoid K a little bit, whether it was an indirect or direct nerf. It should have avoided nerfed avoid K's importance, right? Um, if that's the case, then and then we were looking at it, and there's a 13-point bump, right? And power goes up one, and I was like, man, that feels like the aggregate BABIP value, not observed BABIP, but the aggregate BABIP value should have went up, right? So we should have seen a bump in BABIP because we see one more POW and 13 more void K, and we all know the relationship. If you don't, there's a lot to post about it. There's a relationship between BABIP, avoid K, and POW, and so and contact, by the way. But and so when we go over here though, BABIP's the same, right? So anyway, we were just like going down rabbit hole after rabbit hole. And so we see that home runs actually went down a tick from Hansons to PTCS, which kind of makes sense because we only see a slight bump in the aggregate POW in the top used cards, but we see almost a 10-point bump in pitcher movement. So that kind of makes sense. Like once EXO pulled out, and we were looking at it. That kind of made sense, right? Like home runs does go down a little bit just because you had pitchers with more movement, and so then we were looking, and it was like, well, there were batters with better in PTCS. We see a bump of around 5 points there, but we also see a bump in pitcher control, and so man, does that really account for that big of a bump in walks? I guess so. So anyway, kudos to Exto because we were looking at this and we're like, this makes absolutely no sense. But then he thought about pulling the usage aggregates and I was like, okay, like kind of makes sense a little bit. So flip, stuff is down very little and the backups were weaker. Yes, like pen played a really big role. Bullpens played much more of a significant role. That was actually one of my critical assumptions. Was that, pitchers, we had pitchers with big stam. I know Tournament Edition Riho, isn't known for his stamina, but some of the other guys, I don't know what the aggregate, top 25 usage was there, but I know I was running guys in triple digits other than the Tournament Edition of Jose Rijo. So I thought bullpens would be irrelevant, and that blew up in my face. So,
yeah, just to kind of talk about the numbers. So basically, I took the top 25 in terms of innings pitched, and then the percentage of the total of those innings pitched, I took their. I think I took the weighted average based on the percentage of VR and VL within the tournament, and then I took that as a percentage of a percentage of their innings pitched according to the top 25. And that's how I kind of came up with these numbers. So,
yeah.
Individual performance may differ based on usage. So if you had someone as a VR or VL, but I thought this was kind of a neat heuristic for, observing the baselines in terms of ratings for between the two tournaments.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you brought that up because I'm sure at least one person was thinking you can't just take the average of the top 25, but Exo did, and he actually did a weighted mean formula. So this is about as close to aggregate ratings as we're going to get. So
especially without splits and tournament data.
Yeah.
If we had splits, it would be probably a lot easier to break this down even more.
Yeah, totally. So any questions from chat so far, kind of looking at top 25 player usage, looking at the rate stats and such. So I guess the one that just, and someone much smarter than me, maybe we can have a guest on one week, if someone would love to explain it in depth, is like the one that gets me is the Friday, the over under the covers was that late Friday night.
Yeah, Friday night, Saturday morning.
Yeah, so the Friday night cap, the homer per 9. If we look at the modifiers, like that just should not ever happen. And so, like the 2010 modifier versus the 1977 modifier with home runs, it's almost pulling like this reverse, that we're used to from PT22 and before, where, when you got back to dead ball, it was like a slow pitch softball home run derby. And so, man, that's the one that just doesn't sit with me when we look at this and we see this absurd data. So, which again, I know 88,000 innings pitched, 400,000 batters faced. We still have a long way to go for the data to somewhat stabilize in a way that should be indicative of the modifiers driving the engine. But yeah. Let's see. Before we get into some of the fun, we have a couple of questions. Oh, DA, I saw you mentioned that main, didn't you? That Rick Ruschel threw like Game 7 in both your tournaments. So Mac Jacks, do you guys attribute your tourney's success to this type of analysis? I wish I had more success this year than I have. Maybe Aster.
Ask Aster.
Yeah, Aster's running circles around us.
So I would say, it's definitely a big factor is, there are for a lot of these tournaments, we're getting very different run environments compared to last year. A lot of the Aero tournaments had some adjustments, but they're really this year just feel like each tournament is its own kind of, micro environment. And so looking at, whenever I rebuild a roster, I look at, these kind of numbers, or, from the data we've seen, even though it's still, especially for like weeklies, where we're dealing with very small sample sizes, but, what does the K per nine look like? What was what base, walks per nine, homers per nine, all those different things. I look at kind of what that run environment suggests, and then I kind of, that's kind of a piece that I pull in before I start thinking about individual players, because just when I start to think about which individual players fit, I usually kind of have that in mind. If I see that the walk rate's elevated, a guy like Toby Harris probably finding his way into my lineup somehow. Although to a certain extent, Toby Harris seems to find his way into my lineup regardless of what the settings are. But that's him and John Morrill. Those are guys that definitely, when you see some of these run environments, they just fit so much better than certain other types of players. And I think that really helps a lot in terms of maximizing the production you're going to get out of specific guys. So it doesn't kind of change my general approach, but for kind of specific players, if they're of similar value, I kind of lean towards who fits the stats best.
Yeah.
I would say for me, it's up to the point where we make the assumptions and then kind of run the tournaments and then check the assumptions based off of the observed data, and then kind of do the next iteration of roster building.
Yeah, I think that's a good point too. The Mad Jack's kind of I guess kind of put a bow on your question. I love what Aster said, and I love what Exto added right there. And for me, I'm lucky to have these two guys as partners, as tournament partners, and Exto is so disciplined about capturing data and bouncing ideas off faster. And so really for me, you guys that know me well know I've just been drowning the last few months in real life stuff, and so I haven't had time to run a lot of the analysis I did last year. And so for me, it's about making decisions. And so I'm a huge fan of John Morrill at second base. I know his defensive stats may scare some people, but I don't see any impact on overall results. And so Morrill's kind of my go-to, especially in caps at second base. If I'm going to shave points off him and drop to someone like Daly, Silver Daly, then I want the data and the run environment to justify that decision. And so I hope that makes sense. So when I'm making some of those fine-tuning choices and I'm trying to get to that final cap number, I really want those, because that's a big decision, right? Morrill plays such a critical role in the lineup in so many tournaments. If I'm going to make that decision, I want it to be based down to the depth of environmental factors. When it comes to general roster building, those of us that play so many tournaments, I think our gut can get us 92 to 95% of the way, and sometimes that's all we have time for. But if it's 4:30 a.m. and I've got 30 minutes to kind of tinker with my rosters for the day, then I'm going to pull up the data and try and make some of those more critical decisions. Yeah. Let's see. You don't have to be a data analyst, though. Just broad knowledge about arrows can help. Yeah, totally, PJ. Like, especially if you're going to go in and kind of familiarize yourself, like when you see a tournament environment, you hop in base and you take a look at the league totals, you can absolutely make some assumptions. But again, for the average player, 95% is plenty, right? And if you play enough of these tourneys and you are looking at some data, you're going to get an idea for what works and what doesn't work.
Even just going to like Baseball Reference and comparing 2010 home run totals, like the table in that first slide or first couple of slides, like you can reproduce that just by going and looking at Baseball Reference or Fangraphs and just be like, oh, okay, walks are down, strikeouts are up. Like, so you don't even have to go into the base game if you don't want to.
Yeah.
It is supposed to be modeled off of real life as much as we kind of joke about it and how things don't really line up.
Oh, so Matt Jax, you actually bring up a really good point. And by the way, like Matt Jax is successful. Like, let's be real, guys. He's, um, one thing I do. You made a good point. I always sort about war in the actual pool. One thing that clear. You'll see a lot of flames on top of guys. One confer. Yeah. And so Matt Jax, maybe we just have an entire stream about this one week. It's not on our schedule right now, but we can. War, I know, you didn't ask this question. I do want to mention it real quick. War is somewhat of a controversial topic, especially in the stats and data channel, where you have a bunch of math guys in there talking. And so, war guys, like, again, I don't know what's up with war and the PT-23. It seems heavily weighted towards defense, and OTP will say they calc their own war. They don't really use methodology from any of the third parties, and so someone correct me if I'm wrong about that. But so the war definitely seems weighted towards defense in PT-23. The war stat. I'll still look at it, by the way. I'm not saying it's useless, but it definitely seems weighted towards defense. But we're also not seeing a ton of evidence as, defense being critical for turning builds. And so just something to think about, guys. So maybe one week we could talk about kind of calculating your own war stat.
So personally, how I've been dealing with the data is I've been calculating the WOBA coefficients on a per tournament basis, and I've been using the WOBA or WRC plus or WRAA to evaluate their offensive output, and then using war to measure their defensive contributions. Even though I can't really subtract the two, it's just kind of more of an eyeball to sort of say if this person's has a 140 WRC plus, but isn't the top war person at their position, then maybe their defense is kind of hurting them, type of thing.
Yeah. Good point. You don't even have to calculate your own war stat. Just knowing their offensive production and just eyeball testing that against their observed war. No, Mac Jax, totally. And sorry, I meant to say, I know that wasn't your question. I know you're not a war go burr type guy. But by the way, guys, if you want to see how impactful Morrill is as a second baseman, for those of you that pulled the data, go look at his WAR in cap tournaments, and just know that he's not a total black hole at second base, or I should say I don't know, a cardboard cutout. I know he's not a cardboard cutout at second base. He's probably not that much better, but holy crap, that guy's observed WAR performance anyways is just stunning. So yeah. Mike, a traffic cone. His 52 range and 50 infield error and 10 arm, which I know second base is an arm. But then I'm trying to think of the other one. Range error. Oh, turn double play is a 32. And yeah. Yeah, totally. How in the beta defense was important. And by the way, in league, defense is way more important than it is in the tournament environment, at least in the data I've seen. So, yeah, BJ Ron was a monster. So we had a couple more slides for you guys. So I know we went back a good bit. Yeah, so here's actually some. These are top 5 players in usage, correct? Exto? Sorry.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, the slides aren't really coming in that well. Maybe, I don't know if you can zoom in on them somehow or make it bigger and then shift it over.
Yeah, you know what? I can improvise something.
Or
Let's just hope I don't break it.
Maybe I can.
Oh, you know what?
Here, I think I know what to do. Maybe is this
Oh,
gonna?
yeah. If you're in the editor, if you stretch out the image size, I don't know if it'll reflect in real time since I'm in presentation mode, but
Oh, yeah. Okay.
okay.
Well, I can just read it off for you. So number one was McCovey at first base. He had sort of above average 106 WRC plus. His contributions for Cap War seemed like Rusty was probably a better play, but a lot less plate appearances there. In terms of the bat R, that was another thing that I've been also capturing in terms of caps is looking at bat R. I know a lot of people. Which Willie? 1968. I don't have the. Yeah, 1968 is the diamond.
Yeah.
Another way to kind of divide out the war versus the offensive versus the defensive partition is kind of looking at Badar. I know some people don't like it, but it's something that's easy to kind of index against, I guess. For second base, the top five are Hera, Randolph, 75 Morgan, Don Money, and Bobby Richardson. So again, your best value was probably Toby Hara. Um, Only 600 plate appearances in the format between the two tournaments, so not a lot of people have it. Um, for left field, it was quite a bit of plate appearances captured there between Hank, Ellis, Colavito, Williams, Gant. Uh, so Hank, heads and shoulders above anyone else running in left field. Yeah, just looking at the numbers. And then in center, we had kind of a mixture between Burks, Mantle, Doby as kind of on top, with Mays and Ashburn being played more, but having kind of a weaker impact. The 1958 Ashburn had probably the highest WAR per cap point, but didn't really provide much in terms of the bat.
Yeah. And that's actually a good example, kind of what we were talking about earlier, of looking at Cap War versus Cap Bat R. And so you can see that, I mean, he's got a noodle for a bat, especially relative to the player pool there in center field. But, he made up some ground with his glove, having the Cap War per 600. So kind of to the point of what we were talking about earlier. All right. And then we have
The next slide, which I believe this is third base. So 8,000 plate appearances at third base for Brooks
Wow.
Robinson. He by far was the most valuable player third base. Eddie Matthews kind of made a run at it, but he was about average at third base. But yeah, Brooks was several WAR above him. For shortstop, it looked like the 1991 Cal Ripken, which I think is the diamond.
think so. I think 87 Cal. No, I think I'm mixing overall. But I think the gold Cal is late 80s Cal, right? Think so, chat. Someone can help out. But yeah, I think
99 is 1991.
the Diamonds 1991. Sorry, Esther.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Yeah, so Cal was pretty much average in terms of bat, but defensively he provided, or he was above average defensively, but and above average in terms of bat.
Yeah.
His 99 OPS plus. Other ones, Concepcion was surprisingly not terrible. He was still kind of 60 WRC plus and 80 OPS plus, but in terms of WOBA and whatnot, he had the best, second best. Then you get Harrelson, Granny Hamner. Surprisingly, I guess, was way down there. with a 45 WRC plus, and rookie sensation Phil Linz. I guess that's where people punted the most, or the everyone's fill in.
Yeah.
Then we have, I believe, right field, and right field was dominated by Hank, 8,000 plate appearances. Duke Snyder was about average in terms of right field, because it was so dominated by Hank. And then the same with Ellis Burks, he was around there. And then Colavito was kind of trying to punch above his belt in terms of WAR and cap WAR and cap bad R, but he seemed to be just a little bit below, I guess, replacement level. And then you had Special Edition Pete Rose, who had a really good BABIP in his 900 plate appearances, but was still about 10 to 20% worse than the field.
Yeah.
And then finally for catcher, everyone's favorite Platinum Series silver catcher, and maybe in gold as well, Mickey Telleton, had 3,000 plate appearances, had a 338 WOBA, and a 79 WRC plus, 90 OPS plus. His WAR per 600, just because I'm presuming his framing runs was lower than Sherm Lawler, but you can kind of see he tried to make it up with the bat. And specifically because he's a silver versus Lawler's 96?
6 or 7, yeah.
Yeah, so he provides pretty good value both offensively and defensively.
Yeah, the Joe Askew love. Yes, Seawit. The Joe Askew love is real. The which we see. Yeah, I think Lenz is probably a fill-in, maybe a punt, maybe, but yeah, but I think I saw a few builds that were just punting at catcher. So, and then we have pitching.
Yeah, we added pitching. This is probably a little bit more legible. So yeah, Koosman's good.
He's very
I
good.
apologize if your Koosman did not do well. I know a lot of people's Koosman didn't do well, but yeah, I'm guessing these are pretty much the usual suspects. You can kind of see availability of the cards
My
based on their
early
usage.
win didn't pitch like that, Gus. I don't know what happened. Don't know what happened.
It feels like for left-handed pitchers, everyone ran Sid Fernandez, and he was bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then for right-handed pitchers, Wynn crushed it, Krukow crushed it, Hutchison crushed it. I ended up buying a bunch of these cards because I'm poor and don't pull perfects, so I got the tier below. For the next time we play the 1977 PTCS, which is probably not going to happen.
Fingers crossed. I definitely feel better about the 1 million I dropped leading up to PTCS to do absolutely nothing. God bless. Oh yeah, dude. My tournament edition Riho, and his brief appearances did great too. Seawit. I thought going into the weekend that he was a huge advantage for people that had him. Yeah, he was a beast. Do we have bullpen on here?
Yeah, we have one more slide.
Okay, cool.
This one, yeah, this is kind of legible. So, yeah, it was a smattering of relievers.
Yeah. Looks like Sid Monge was throwing batting practice.
Yep. The cheap guys, yeah. So, outliers, I guess. Gary Lucas had 869 batters faced for left-handed pitching. Harshman, I think I had Harshman, but maybe not in the pen.
I did in one of my builds. My build that actually won some. I had Harshman.
Yeah. So he pitched pretty well. Twitchell did well considering everything. Denny did well in very small sample sizes.
Yeah.
Lemon Jello, which I think is a
he's like a 46, something like that.
I think he's even a 40.
Oh, he's
Uh,
yeah, he's like a 35, 35, 70 or 80 or something like that, right?
his ratings, yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, he's a 42 with 37, 32, 59
Oh, 59.
for stuff.
Wow.
So yeah, so apparently control is important, I guess. But um, yeah, so there's Jerry Stevenson's. Yeah, these are like probably you're scraping the bottom of the barrel in terms
Yeah.
of here, except maybe like Steve Bedrosian, Dennis Eckersley. I think Fisher's a diamond. Is he not? Or no, he's a
Yeah.
gold.
Yeah,
So
Well,
that
some people,
Splittorf. Who had Splittorf? It had to be one of the champions to get that level of observed, even in that small sample size.
yeah,
That guy went off for somebody's roster.
yeah. So you could kind of see just from here that there's quite a bit of difference in utilization of cards and just investment across their pitching staff between their starting pitching and their relievers.
Yeah. The last thing I'll say, and I know we need to wrap up, but the last thing I'll say is I was terrified of running any lefties whatsoever. And I just Harshman's too much of a value to pass up, and Lucas is so great for 50 points. So I still went with them, not because I'm smart or anything, but looking at the data now, that would have been fun to pull up left-handed pitching performance versus right-handed pitching performance. But just looking at the observed data, I mean, it pops out at you that the left-handers were just throwing fire, which, again, tinfoil. Does splits even matter in PT23, guys? I don't know. But the left-handers were just throwing fire in this tournament. Especially in the bullpen, which you can't even blame that on platoons or anything, right? Because like it was a cap tournament, right? No one's platooning, and so but the left-handers were just killing it.
My
Um,
my left-handers in across both my teams. My best starter was Sid Fernandez, and then my
yeah,
second best starter was Harshman. Welch beat out Ryan, and then yeah, Jimmy Key was bad.
yeah. So Adesep, are you rumps? Like it's got to be right. Who else asked about Seawolf? I mean, who else asked about Randy Wolf? Oh, that's funny. Um, so, any last thoughts, kind of as we kind of wrap up PTCS, which was PTSD for many of us? As we wrap up July's version of PTSD, any thoughts, Aster or Exto?
I think
Uh,
just, we'll see. I'm guessing we're going to get, for the next one, we're going to get another, odd format. We'll see how much, relevant data that we have, based on the MS formats from last year and then this PTCS format. It looks like they're going to continue with the trend of, mixing it up and doing something where we don't have a huge sandbox of data. We're probably not going to get like, you know, Silver Open or something like that. Maybe they'll throw that in there at some point, but I think we're probably going to get some sort of alphabet soup of mix of eras and caps and different things like that. I wouldn't be surprised if we get floor ceiling version in one of these because that seems to be very popular this year. And so that what I think that says to me is you've got to be willing to extrapolate from very limited data and make educated guesses and just try and put together the best team you can, and then you have to hope it works out. It won't every time. The nice thing about it is you can qualify in multiple formats and just try and get as many lottery tickets where you don't have the same chance as everybody else. Maybe if you put in the effort, you do some work, you can get um, maybe you get one number that you already know, and that gives you an advantage. But ultimately, we're all just at the whim of the RNG in a single tournament, and just keep on plugging and see how it goes. Or you could be Seawit and win the first time, and then now not have to worry about it for a while.
I,
Totally.
I'm looking I'm looking for the high iron floor, low gold, live card only set in 1920.
Oh, why not 1930?
and
1930, yes, 1930.
and it'll be a high silver floor and a low gold cap. But it's going to be 1927 league modifiers from PT21. So we're going to make it interesting. So guys, one thing we are planning on doing PD a draft breakdown with some of the strategies we use, and then do a live draft or two on stream. We are looking at doing that. We are looking. What are some of the other things we talked about, guys? Oh, doing kind of a doctor show for people's tournament rosters where you can submit rosters and we'll do a breakdown of them. And we could even pull you in Discord to do that. So we've talked about doing like roster doctor. We've talked about taking a format and we both gut our rosters and rebuild it together. Kind of letting people in the chat make choices too. We've talked about doing all of these because we just want to help you keep getting better at tournaments. We're not afraid of the competition. I mean, obviously, Astro's not, but it's not about that, guys. It's about if you feel better about playing in tournaments, you'll stick around all year. And we just want a good, healthy tournament scene. And so if you would, just shoot us a DM or ping us in chat. Let us know what you'd like for us to do. And yeah, we appreciate everything, guys. And
Just
oh, go ahead, Exa.
I was just gonna say, like we've talked about this previously, and it does seem that there's lots of ways to skin a cat, especially in the tournament scene. And they've been, as much as we kind of complain about the tournaments that are being offered and the formats and whatnot, just having more people playing them provides more, I guess, disparity in the cards played, and you get to learn more about how the game runs when not everyone's running the same 26 cards, because then it's just really full variance. And one thing that MDub mentioned to me earlier today and we've mentioned it in chat, is that variance plays a large part in this game, and you can make all the right choices and you can still lose. And at times this game is very frustrating, but sometimes that's baseball.
This baseball.
You really have to separate yourself once you've kind of made the decisions that you made. And I think that was one of the things going into PTCS is I knew I didn't have the best cards. I knew I had a system, and I think last minute I made some changes because I was looking at all the ridiculous right-handed bats, and I was like, oh god, I have to change my starting rotation, and I have to change all my bullpen arms because everyone's running right-handed batters, and for me, my best pitchers were left-handed pitchers, and it's like sometimes you, like you said, you just trust the ratings and don't really care about platoons or any of the platoon advantages that happen.
Agreed. And by the way, guys, from now on the stream, we have to start saying platoon, right? Is that how Charles says it?
I've just it's been ingrained in me now.
So maybe one week we can cover when to platoon and when not to. But anyway, guys, we love doing this for y'all. Give us feedback. Let us know if this was fun to do. We can also do breakdown and analysis like this for some of the weeklies if you guys thought this was a good stream. So it's another idea we can do for a future week. So, but I'm getting the hook. It's my bedtime for the kids. And yeah, and thanks for joining us. We did apply for drops. We'll keep y'all up to date on that. And feel free to plug our stream in Maine so that you can join along with us and maybe get some shiny packs. But yeah, we appreciate you guys joining us tonight. Exto, Aster? I think they already fell asleep. I was going to let y'all say goodbye.
Okay.
Adios.
Yeah, we'll see you guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.